brain that you can ever imagine. And she does some incredible things with the water and her practice. She's been around for many years doing what she does the best. And it gives me great pleasure to bring on stage right now Dr. Corinne Allen.
Thank you,
Welcome,
Betty.
welcome. It's all yours.
Good morning. Thank you. Good response. We're going to have fun this morning. We're going to talk about some ways that we can enhance our brains, and you're going to see in practice how we do this and how this amazing magic water has helped so many people with their brain. We have people come to us from all over the world, and we have a brain camp, and we're going to show you how we deal with their brains. A lot of this can apply to maybe people that you know, and you can think about how they could be helped. And we're going to show you some ways that we have found to be tried and true and effective to help really restore pathways, and that's all we're doing. We're stimulating pathways, and we're restoring pathways in the brain, and when you restore those, you get new function. We're going to tell you about several of the people that have come through the program. This is a little girl named Chloe, and she had about half of her brain removed on the left-hand side because she had constant seizures that would not stop. And so the only way that medical science knew to stop that was through taking that part of the brain out. That left her kind of hemiplegic, and they called her cerebral palsy. And she was just a precious little girl and had a lot of issues because of that now that the brain wasn't there all the way. This is Jeannie. Jeannie came to us when her parents called me with a plea for help and said, my daughter has severe depression, anxiety. She won't come out of her room. She has anorexia. She's very suicidal and totally shut down. Literally, she would stay in her room with the blinds drawn day after day. She was in her 30s, and the parents were terrified that they were going to lose her. This was going on since she was a teenager. She came to our program for help. Then we have Vernice, who was about in her 80s. She had a car accident. She was very healthy and very active up until that car accident, and a few weeks or days after that, she had a stroke. And that just compounded the injury in the brain. She came to us because she couldn't balance properly, she couldn't think properly, she couldn't keep up her work schedule. She was a reflexologist, and she wanted to keep practicing. And people loved her work. Elsa was one of our little autistic children, and this is a common position behavior, screaming, yelling all the time in their severe cases. She was nonverbal. She never acted like a normal child, and she had delayed development in all areas. Then we had Jason. He was a lovely young man, already in his late 20s, early 30s. He also had seizures very often, developmental and social delays. He was very slow in his speech, couldn't get the words out. People thought he was more retarded. That really bothered him because he could get it inside, but he couldn't get it out. Temper tantrums and anxiety, and his life was just not coming together. Yvette was a beautiful young lady. Now we got her at about 15, 14. She had a skateboard accident. They were building a house. This brother built a little ramp on the porch. She fell off of it, cracked her head open, and died. They believed in the resurrection power of the Lord, and they prayed, and she came back to life. She was pretty much a vegetable, but they continued not giving up that faith and that hope, and brought her through many, many phases of her development with alternative therapies. And I got her when she was pretty much able to walk and talk and learn, and she just needed some finishing touches. She had delays, she had self-image problems, she had a severely damaged optic nerve, and she had balance and motor problems. Then we deal with Matt and Bethany, who were adults, or Matt, I think, was already in his teenage years. Bethany was an adult. And we see many help for them. They don't get all the way well, but we can see a lot of changes can be produced for them. So our job is not to just give them 12 days and 30 days at home of intense therapy. We want them to have permanent changes. we want to change their life, because when we change their life, we're going to change the life of their family as well. So here's the way we do it. We have all these therapies that we integrate. They're all alternative. They're all dealing with the energy frequencies. We use light, sound, and motion. This bed moves. It's wonderful. And you have this light above you that has about 3,000 frequencies, and they're programmed for whatever issues are going on in the brain. You have music coming up under the bed, through speakers, which feel like you're getting a massage when it hits the bass notes. We have an auditory program that integrates and helps stimulate their visual pathways, their auditory pathways, because they all have sensory problems. And then we have music playing over, or a tape playing over in the wall there that integrates information that is blessing their spirit, because these people are usually very crushed, very hurt. Even if they're nonverbal, they have a spirit and they have a soul, and we want to minister to that as well. And then we have a magnet, and we do magnetic fields. So that room is a very energetic room and a very powerful room. And they do that whole process in the dark. Then we do color therapy, and we have colored glasses, we have colored lights, we have everything. Now, crawling and creeping. Crawling and creeping is when somebody has developmental delay, or they've had an injury, or it never developed. We have to go back to those points in the brain where it starts to develop. A newborn baby can crawl. Crawling is on their belly. They can crawl from the womb to the breast at the moment of birth. If they are not crawling when they are first born and in the first 4, 5, 6 months, there will be delay. You know what happens when you don't crawl enough? You don't bond. You don't connect with people. You are more into yourself. You don't have a good self-image. Do we have a society today of that? And look what's happening with our babies. This information is very important for you because you have grandchildren or children or people that you know. And the baby's work should be about 4 hours a day of crawling, putting them on a slippery surface, linoleum or tile or a exercise mat where they can dig in their bare feet and they can move, and they will. And so we do this. This young lady had a tremendous amount of trauma, a tremendous amount of issues from her life, and she was crawling, and you can see there she didn't quite have it down. That's not exactly how you crawl. But as they do it, it begins to kick in the pathways in the brain, and they begin to start to develop those things that help them. Then we do an essential oil massage, and this is very, very powerful, where it actually triggers along the spine and helps correct some of the DNA pathways in the brain. We do foot detox, and every time we can, we bring the parents in and have them come and share in whatever therapies we can with people. We do reflex therapy. We do a lot of different reflexes. We do them with different things. We do them with lasers. We do them by hand, whatever. This young lady was very brain injured. She was in her 30s already. The parents were not giving up. When she first came, these movements of moving the hands and the legs usually take about 5 minutes to whip through. It took her about 30. She was very stiff, very rigid. The parents did not give up. We got quite a bit of progress during the 12 days, but by the end of those 12 days, she wasn't fluid yet. They took her home and kept doing it. Within a few weeks, she was doing it very fluid, and already the brain had made changes and helped her to have a better level of life. These are more of the reflexes that we do. We teach the parents how to do them. We do have hyperbaric that we offer, and we offer them good food. Remember, you can't just have good water, which is very important for the brain. You have to have good food. We give them a dairy-free and a wheat-free. Most of them that come there have never eaten like this, have never had a diet that is so amazing. We give them lots of raw food in the forms of very luscious salads, different kinds of salads, and by the time they're leaving, they're asking, give me your cookbook, give me these recipes. We do a lot of movement therapy. In fact, the brain moves so fast, and the brain wants to help you so fast that sometimes just doing some of these balance work, you get a connection almost instantly. It's not a long time to get things going. Over the years, we saw that people had such needs and were so wounded. The parents were wounded. The children were wounded, even, again, if they were nonverbal, that we decided to bring in a prayer counselor who was just specifically there by choice if they wanted to use her. We didn't want to put anything on anybody. People have enough judgments on them. People have enough pressure, and we didn't want that to be. And we got a lady, and have had several ladies that come in and that are very non-judgmental and very open. And it doesn't matter what faith people come from. In the first few days, they're a little bit, you know, we're reacting to what we've had in our past. We've been pushed upon, we've been judged, we've been, you know, made to feel bad about whatever. We already feel bad enough about ourselves. We don't need somebody else telling us something. So the first few days, people are a little reticent to talk with her, but after they start to see how non-judgmental, how wonderful it is, and how much happens when they have somebody who comes and just really prays for their needs. After the first few days, people were going, I didn't get my appointment today. I want my appointment. And they would line up and get their appointments and make sure that they had that time. We do the trampoline, and this young man was very autistic, and you can see us encoding. First of all, we help them to get the pathway, and then after a while, they just get it, and you can see him there. There he goes. At first, they couldn't, they were all over the place, but it begins to hit the brain and begin to go. Now, we come to one of the most important things in the entire program, and that is the water. The water that we use is alkaline, ionized, microclustered water. When we added this about 5 years ago, things really began to change, and we have to have all the pHs. We actually use 8.5, 9.0, 9.5, and 11.5, and 2.5. We use everything in the program. And it is amazing what has happened. And we give them 16, 18-ounce glasses, and after a therapy, maybe a light therapy or a trampoline, go in and drink your water. And they drink that whole thing. Why is alkaline ionized water so important and the most important thing? Because your brain is 80% water. Can you imagine getting through your day with only 20% of your ability to walk, 20% of your ability to think, 20% of anything, 20% of your clothes on? That might put it there. What in the world would you use if you could only have 20%? Well, it's very, very important. So this alkaline water facilitates the hydration. You're going to get pretty hydrated when you have to do these exercises. You need energy. Almost 100% of the people come to us with little to no energy. They have poor digestion. They need detoxification. They need inflammation. They have free radicals everywhere, and they need oxygenation. So this hydration, this is a picture of a hydrated and a dehydrated brain. Movement therapy, you know, when you're jumping all the time and you're moving and crawling and creeping, that's a lot of work. And I'll tell you, we needed some way to quickly energize these people who, for the most part, didn't have energy to begin with. It enhanced their performance, and it allows them to drink the water, and you don't slush it around. That was the most incredible thing. You know that it's microclustered immediately when you have got that water and you can go jump and it doesn't slush in your stomach. And you know that this is the only water that gets directly inside the cell, not just around the cell. This is my daughter, who was one of my reasons why I learned this and had motivation. She was born with asphyxiation at birth. She didn't have enough oxygen, had a home birth. And I was very concerned about her. I was already working on things for the brain for my clients and understanding that a lot of things like Epstein-Barr and Lyme and all these things were coming from a brain injury. And I realized that she did have significant loss of oxygen. She was blue, and that she needed some help very early on. So we developed a program around her. And by the time we started this phase of the program with the light, sound, and motion, she was pretty well developed and through a lot of her brain injury, although we've done stages beyond that. And you may meet her. She's here today with me. And when you see a young lady with me, that is her. She's 24 today. But she has been a great therapist and a great help. And here she is working with a little autistic young man. And this is how we get them to crawl and to creep. We kind of hover over them and give them that encouragement. They have about 6 hours of therapy a day, and they have got to have that water. Little children like this, they almost never drink water. And so it's also teaching the parents, we have got to get water in our children. Don't give them juice. Don't give them sodas. Give them water. Digestion is so important. It's so big in the autistics and in the developmentally delayed because They get a lot of brain issues when your digestion and your elimination isn't working right. We do too, but theirs is heightened. And so they need, the stomach normally needs 3 to 4 hours to get like tap water or bottled water to make it available. And the alkaline water pushes the nutrients into the system so they're more readily available. So we take a glutathione after every therapy, because every time you do a brain enhancing therapy, and including like exercise, which enhances our brains, you are going to use up glutathione. If you do not have enough reserve glutathione to make the new brain cells, you don't make those new connections. So we found that out in the program, and so we'll give them that with a big glass of water. And the reason it's absorbed immediately is because the water carries it in. Water is the major factor in enzyme processes. Enzymes are thousands and thousands of functions and activities in the body all day long, and we need those enzymes to work, particularly in the brain and in the digestion. So water is most important during the final stage of elimination as well. If we get constipation, we get crabby people. We don't want that. And here is just a picture of the smaller clusters. They can easily get into the cells. And folks, that is something that is so important. And we kind of take it for granted after we drink the water for a while. But how many of you ever feel like, ugh, I just drank too much? You can even drink 16, 18 ounces. You don't feel like that, do you? Because it's immediately going in. And results, most of you will identify with this. The stools are cleaner when the water is taken on a regular basis, and it detoxifies the lactic acid. And so they're doing a lot of muscle work that they haven't been doing, and they're never going to have sore muscles. The ionized water is about half the size, so it penetrates the cellular membranes, and it speeds up the waste removal from the tissues. So it's very, very important. Alkaline ionized microclustered water aids in detoxification. We're moving a lot of drugs out of the system, and there's increased secretion. And we do a toxic metal detox, and we were talking yesterday about the detox from that. We've discovered a technique to use light with frequency to move the metals out. We've seen miraculous results moving lead poisoning. We had a neurologist come in who had severe lead poisoning, was in bed for about 6-8 years. The day after we did the detox, took one time to get the lead out, she was like full of energy, able to do full crawling, able to move like she was a normal person. Now, the water was significant. We needed that water directly after that flush and constantly to keep flushing. She had no negative signs at all, except a little bit of fatigue. And due to the logarithmic scale of the pH, a small change in pH has a large effect. So we can detox the pesticides and the drugs and the carcinogens and the neurotoxins, and we often use the 11.5 water to help flush out things, because here's a secret about the 11.5. If you're feeling quite well and you don't have a lot of things going on, you may feel a little nauseous if you take more than maybe a couple ounces. But if you are really sick, like we have people with very strong EMF poisoning, or the autistics, or they've had strokes or whatever, but there's a lot of free radicals going on in the body, they can drink a ton of it, a cup, 2 cups, a quart, and feel fantastic after it. So when we discovered that, we saw how important it was to use it, because it was so helpful in the detox. And we want those cells to be hyperalkalized. And we can raise what's called voltage by adding that 11.5 water, because it is such high, or we'll call it low, ORP, but I'm calling it high in terms of its ability to handle a lot of energy and put a lot of voltage into the system. Now, there's something that we've discovered, and it's been around for a while. It's called aerotoxic syndrome, and this is contaminated air on the plane. My daughter flew out here with me on another plane, and she said, Mom, they had that stuff, that TCP on the plane. I could smell it. And I said, that's the same airlines that this pilot came to us with, and maybe it's a common thing in their planes, but it's very common on the airplanes. If you ever smell smelly socks or something that smells weird on the airplane, it is the TCP. Cover your nose and pray that you don't get poisoned, because it's highly neurotoxic. The cabins, people in the cabins, the crew, and the pilots are getting poisoned with it, and up to 200,000 passengers a year are getting neurotoxic poison. This is a pilot that came to us, and you can see on the left, she's not able to balance too well. She had actually fallen quite a few times, just recovered from knee surgery. She could not go back to work. Then you see her on the right-hand side. She's walking on the balance beam with perfect balance. She left there in 12 days with total ability to function mentally and physically and balance and go back to work as a pilot. The air is drawn out from the engine, and that's where it comes from. The fumes come into the cabin, and it's this hydraulic fuel leak that causes these toxic chemicals. They're aware of it, and Boeing is the one that makes these chemicals, and they know it exists. It's just that it's been very hard to pin it down. And these TCP and the organophosphates are what are causing the neurotoxic syndrome. Now, very quickly, we're going to go through what is causing what kind of symptoms, because if you ever talk to airline personnel or whatever, you're going to sometimes find that they have friends that are not there because they're too sick. They get fatigue, they get asthma symptoms, balance, they can have blurred vision, they can have coughing or confusion problems, diarrhea, feeling intoxicated, headaches, lightheadedness, dizziness, loss of consciousness, memory impairment, nausea. They can have personality changes, respiratory failure, seizures, shaking and tremors, and tightness in the chest, and tingling and tinnitus. A lot of these could sound like other things. And so when they go to the doctors, they don't necessarily find it or label it as neurotoxic syndrome. This is crawling on the left. Look at how she's got her feet in the air. And just through doing the reflexes, just through teaching the brain how to do this, she's then able to do it properly on the right-hand side. Detoxification and neutralizing the toxins. How do we do that? Again, remembering, just put this all in a big glass of water, because we do colored lights and then water. We do reflexes, we do homeopathics, we do toxic metal detox, we do essential oils, we do emotional trauma clearings, we do neural massage, we do strict dietary changes for them, we do the trampoline. And then we get their efficient and improved detoxification from the alkaline, microclustered water, so that there's no healing crisis. If you're in the health field, you understand this, that when the poisons are coming down too fast, you have a negative reaction. It feels like you're getting worse. You may have low back pain, you may have a headache, you may feel very tired. Those can be detox reactions called a healing crisis. But nothing supports cleansing for you every day like washing your cells with the best water. It hydrates the blood and the lymph so that the toxins can move rapidly through the detoxification pathways. And when the quality and the efficiency of the water is improved, the detoxification pathways will move the best. And that's why you have to have the best. You are detoxing. Do you know when you wake up in the morning how much water you need? 32 ounces. When I get ready in the morning, I go fill a cup, get a cup, or I take a quart jar when I'm at home, and I just start drinking that in the time that it takes me to get ready. And by the time I'm ready to take my morning supplements or my morning brew, not coffee though, my supplement brew, I've already had a lot of water. Now, we want this water because inflammation, if you've ever had a brain injury, if you've even had premature birth, or you had a hit on your head and it was 20, 30, 40 years ago, you probably have inflammation still, because it doesn't usually just go away. Brain inflammation is a very critical problem, and it needs to be dealt with, because here's what science says, that you can have depression and anxiety. 40 million people today suffer from that, and it comes from, a major cause of it is the chronic inflammation. Inflammation lowers serotonin. So think about anybody that's taking serotonin-enhancing drugs. They have a lot of inflammation, and it causes more inflammation and more free radicals, more of the plus ions, if you have it for a long period of time. And anytime you have any kind of expression of a neurological problem, it is because you have inflammation in the brain, and it needs to be stopped. Now, what are some ways that we get inflammation? Well, premature births. If there was a fever in the mother, or she was sick, if you had been in the military and there were explosions going off, or you had post-traumatic stress, traumatic injuries, hits to the head, and again, a car accident, or somebody bonked you on the head, or you had a football injury. Toxic exposures. I've had people in the program who have smelled pesticides, or their mother ate food that was not cleaned, fruits and vegetables. She went on a very, quote, raw, good diet, but she didn't clean the pesticides off, and that concentration caused very severe brain injury in her child. And then low glutathione. We talked some about how that is important. Once there's inflammation in the brain, now we talked, some of you've heard me say about the blood-brain barrier. Anytime you've had an incident to the brain, you have what opens the blood-brain barrier, and that does not close by itself. And in research we'll find, and we have found, that there's always like 5, 10, 15% of that blood-brain barrier that's really functioning. You need it about 60, 70, or 80% functioning to be able to stop getting smells bother you, people bother you, sounds bother you. You're tired easily, you get sick easily, you have a blood-brain barrier issue going on. People that can't drink the water. You have people that you know that can't drink the water right away. They have a blood-brain barrier. Don't just jam it down them, and don't ever, ever give anybody 9.5, because you have no idea. If they have a blood-brain barrier opening, you can throw them into a very severe detox, and they will never talk to you again. Because that is your protection. And so when you have things like autism and Alzheimer's and attention deficit and diabetes and autoimmune and trauma and exposure to toxic chemicals and infections, you definitely have a blood-brain barrier opening. And we have a special little trick that we use with an essential oil from Ecuador called Copaiba that will just put above the ears, and it will instantly start an energetic closure of that blood-brain barrier. And if you do it over time, it starts to give the body that stimulation to the nervous system and to heal it. Antioxidants reduce brain inflammation. We want that. And we have the most potent. Who wants to take pills all day long? Who wants to take those expensive antioxidant drinks all day long? We just use water. How simple can that be? And you know that we want the negative ORP between 300 and 800, because that's going to give us more voltage. The more voltage you have, the more power you have in the body to heal itself. The water never heals anything. The water can't heal anything. It's just there to be serviced by the body. The body uses it and says, thank you very much. You've given me what I need to reduce the inflammation and to go after these positive free radicals. Inflammation causes them, and we can go after it because it gets after the, effectively gets after the free radicals, effectively gets after the high, of its high negative ORP, and it attracts and neutralizes them, and it will reduce the brain inflammation. I had a cool example. My sister had a brain surgery last October, and I was not able to have free access to her, but I was allowed into her intensive care on about the second day, and her blood pressure was so high they wouldn't let her out of intensive care. And I had my bag there with a lot of my water in it, and I said, oh my goodness, you don't even have a glass here. Where's your water? And, you know, I said to the nurse who's in the window behind me watching everything I'm doing, where's your glass? And he's over there, you know. So I went, and it was a styrofoam glass, and I said, sorry, that won't work. You got anything else? And so we found a glass, filled it, and watched the monitor. I wished I'd had a video of it. If I'd have known, I'd have done it. And one glass. Now, she was like 5% hydrated at that point because she hadn't had water for almost 18 hours. And can you imagine? Brain surgery, and they don't give them water? Oh, my goodness. So, well, it was more than that because she was in there a day already. I was the second day. So it was quite amazing. So I gave her this glass of 9.5. She was already drinking the water some. She hasn't gotten it here yet totally. But that monitor jumped 20 points down. It was amazing. And I just thought, wow. I've heard that story of how it lowers the blood pressure and how it lowers, and there I saw it right before my very eyes. And you know that she stayed. I gave her about 8 glasses. I lined them up and I said, you be sure and drink these. And that's all they gave her. I wasn't allowed to give her any more. And do you know that she stayed to about 50% hydrated through the next day? That's amazing. Absolutely amazing. Alkaline water is that best antioxidant and that free radical scavenger. And we all know the chart on how the pH works. And we know that the brain needs oxygen, needs to be alkaline, and we need that water of alkaline, ionized water because it carries acid. I have a series that I've done on Your Brain on Water, And we also have the science and practice of electrolyzed reduced water. And in there I give you the research studies. It's now on video. It's brand new for you. But we have all this available for you to show you the research. Depression, anxiety, anorexia, ADD, they're all related to acidosis and inflammation and free radicals. Is that so simple? It's in the research, folks. It's not something we have to make up. It's the most important nutrient in the brain, and it's going to raise that oxygen in the body and in the brain. It contains more oxygen, and the pH increases, so does the predominance of the hydroxyl or the negative ions, and that's what we want. And drinking it gives us that oxygen, and once it's inside the body, we're going to get more of those negative ions, and we're going to get more of the negative hydrogen ions. This is what we want. And the higher the pH, the more the negative hydrogen, the more negative hydrogen. You know what hydrogen is. You know what a bomb is, right? That's a lot of energy going. Okay, so the higher the pH, the lower, or you could say the more negative, that we want those negative ions, so we're going to get more powerful negative ions the higher the pH is. We're going to get DNA repair. The research shows that alkaline ionized water can protect and it prevents DNA damage. We're getting exposed to chemicals every day. There's chemicals in this room. There's EMF. That is producing a lot of free radicals. Alkaline water can protect from the toxic effects of free radicals which cause the DNA damage. We're getting more babies born now today than ever with DNA damage. And they go, well, it's just genetic. We don't know where it came from, right? You've heard of it. I go, where does it come? And yes, DNA damage can be restored and repaired because you're making new cells every day and you can reprogram those cells. Absolutely. Here's a young man that came to us, and his father's whole goal in life was to just give him a good life and just to provide for him. But they found us and they brought him to the program, and he came and he'd walk like this. So we did hours and hours of reflex work and hours of work to reestablish connections in that brain. And he became very, very excited about getting his brain back. And you know, he came about 2 or 3 times to it. Now, this young man, he walks with authority. He walks with confidence. He can speak to you like a normal person. He has a job. He has a car. He has a girlfriend. He's gone on trips overseas. He's in college. And he has a life. And wow. Why is this alkaline ionized microclustered water so important? Because we make them work hard. And the staff works hard too. We all are needing the water, so we drink it. We need good sleep. You get good sleep when you drink the kind of water we have. Many participants are low in energy, or they're all severely dehydrated. Everybody comes in dehydrated. One of the reasons is because of the flying, but another reason is that's just their style of life. They don't really think about water. Most of them have never even experienced the oxygenized, energized water. And we know that the brain needs 80% water. It's full of water. We've got to hydrate the brain. This was a young man that came with OCD, very severe. And he had significant changes. And here's some of the intense therapies we do. They're actually kind of fun for the people. They'll do work on the ball. They'll do crawling. Here's a gal that was paralyzed. You're going to see her in a minute, who actually was able to get down on the floor and crawl. This is another gal that came to us with Asperger's. She was severe. She had never run in her life. She was able to run about the 2 blocks from the clinic to where we feed them. And she had so much energy that she would go back to the clinic at night and continue to do exercises so that she could speed up her healing. It was like she woke up. Her parents also brought her a couple times, and she made spectacular improvement. What are the signs of dehydration? They're your and my signs too. When you get fatigued, when I lose a thought, I go, oh, water. Get that water in you. Now, I didn't lose that thought, but you want that water. That's your sign that you've got some brain fog. When you get angry too easily, or you get upset, or you have mood swings or pain, when you start to get premature aging, you've got a problem with hydration. When your skin starts to wrinkle, You know, you can put the 560 water on it, and it's beauty water, and it will stimulate your skin. Your skin is an organ. It's alive. It needs to be refreshed and hydrated. When you have memory loss and high blood pressure, these are very easy. These are very simple things that nature's giving us a warning. Nature's giving us a blessing of all these signs, and we know how to fix it. Brain injury and dehydration. The literature is a plethora of how these problems, OCD, autism, people with being on addicts, brain injured, they drink little or no water. That's just a part of their life. It's like they're kind of like brain dead. And so we have to wake up that brain. We want to accentuate their ability to think and to function. And so many of these people have never even drunk water. And they have chronic dehydration, means we have to really push the water. Sometimes we do little contests to help them to get the water. And to make matters worse, most of the people are drinking things that are substitutes for water that have chemicals in them, making more issues in their life. And so we want them to continue to drink, and we teach them. We actually show them videos, and we teach them about how the water affects them. Here's one of the things that we do that really helps with our food. We soak our food. Whether it's organic or not, we soak all the food in 11.5 water for 10 minutes, always in a metal bowl, never in a plastic, because plastics are made out of petrochemicals, and the 11.5 will draw from that. And it makes the food taste amazing. And your food will last in the refrigerator 2 to 3 weeks longer if you do that. If you do things in the garden, we grow a lot of our own food, and we can soak onions and stop the mold so it can be stored in the root cellar and not go bad. And sometimes we'll use frozen organic juices, and we'll add the 8.5 to it. Soaking, these were beans that were many years old, and this took 5 hours to soak these pinto beans. We use them for tacos and burritos and things. And in 5 hours in the 11.5 water, look what happened. We had a sprout on it. That is amazing. The amount of oxygen that went in there to do that was just amazing. Oops. Once in a while, we get people that have little accidents with the fish oil, because omegas are very important to a couple things. Their omega oil is very important to the brain function. There have actually been cases. There was one in the miners, I think it was in Virginia, that worked deep in the mines, that had total shutdown of his brain, his organs, kidney, and they gave him like a quart of the very omega oil that we use. They re-established and activated all of his organs so that he didn't have any damage. It was amazing. So we give them this very same omega oil, and sometimes it goes right through them, and in this case it got on her bed sheets and on her blanket, and you can't get that out with just washing it, and it causes a mess in your washer. So we decided I would soak it in the laundry sink and using 11.5. It took it out in just a few hours, smelled like it was freshly dried in the sun. It was beautiful. So here we have what are the results from the brain camp. This is Yuan, who is a medical doctor, originally from China, but now lived in the United States. She had gone in for a tumor on her cerebellum, and that surgery went badly, and she never recovered. She became paralyzed on her left side, her left eye, left side of her face. And after the 12 days, we used the light, sound, kinds of things that we do. We use a lot of essential oils, which will actually activate the nerves to regrow. And we got her left side functioning so much that she could eat and chew. She could brush her own teeth. She started having vision in her left eye. And she started being able to use her left side so that she could stand in a mirror and do her own grooming in the morning. It was pretty spectacular. Here she is. Here's how we start them. She's held pretty closely with a belt on the trampoline. Her husband's right there with her. And then she's able to do it on her own. She was very cognizant inside, although she couldn't speak very well. She was very cognizant of the fact that she was getting well and that there was hope for her, and she worked very hard. So she would walk, oftentimes with somebody right beside her, like you see on the left with her husband, and holding that belt tightly. Within 9 days, there she is on the right. Nobody's within 6 feet of her. She's totally balanced. That's unbelievable. And she was walking. She walked there by herself. And of course, she had the walls. We want them to always be safe. But this lady, the husband said to me, you know, we've been all over the world for 9 years. And in 9 days, you did more than anybody did in 9 years. Emily's eyes had never tracked, and a lot of people have issues with the eye, one out. We didn't particularly work on it. We just did the therapies, and boom, they came together. We had Matt with OCD. He had outstanding changes. And then we had our little Johnnie, who was so severely autistic. Look at this. It took a grandmother and a grandfather and a mother and a father. They would rotate. So there was always two with him at one time because he was so severe. On the right-hand side, here he is at the end of the program. He's with me. He's following my directions. He's in the room alone. He doesn't need anybody to control his behavior. So where would you go if you had spent thousands of dollars on therapy all over the world and you'd endured hundreds of hours of therapy with minimal results? You were taking drugs, they weren't getting anything but masking, and you felt hopeless or helpless. Well, you could spend 12 days in the brain camp and transform your life, like Jeannie did. Jeannie now has married. She's got a solid relationship. Her mom just emailed me the other day and said, "Thank you so much for saving my daughter's life." She now has twins. They're a year old. She's absolutely integrated back into life like she never had before, and she's whole. Then we have Jason. I'll tell you a little secret. The number one correction for seizures is this water. Every single person that has seizures is dehydrated, and a dehydrated episode will cause it to flow and to come and to have a seizure. The second thing is we're eating breath mints, gum, and toothpaste that have aspartame. Aspartame will cause a seizure. Just look it up. It will trigger a seizure, and it is neurotoxic. It will cause damage in the brain. So Jason's seizures were pretty much controlled and gone by the time he was done, and his speech went from "I am okay" to "How are you today, Jason?" "I am just fine, thank you." He totally was able to process that speech pathway. And then Yvette. This was such a beautiful story because Yvette, self-confident, she went on to finish high school, but the coolest thing in the whole world, which we didn't expect, she did hyperbaric a lot. And her optic nerve regenerated. Now, we saw it there. We saw the changes in the test that we give them. It's a visual test. We saw the changes because she could see, but she went back to her ophthalmologist and he said, "Your optic nerve is restored." So we knew that what we had done was verified. Then Chloe, this dear little girl, guess what? When you take out one side of the brain, you can get function on the other side. And so we began to work with what we had. She was able to then use her left side. She was now able to do the trampoline. She was moving her hand. She was moving her leg. She was beginning to have her speech come, and she was initiating. She had hope. She had hope. She began to initiate her own healing, whereas before she was like, okay, you put these, she's never going to get well. She's never going to do anything. Elsa, our severely autistic child, she began to speak. She went up to her mommy and said, "I love you." Talk about tears. She was in everybody's lap. Autistic children they don't have eye contact and they don't want to have anything to do with you. Everybody was just like, wow. This little girl on the left, you can even see the change in her face. She was a new little girl very quickly. And Vernice, she got her balance. She was there with her grandson who had issues in his brain, and they both had incredible changes. And the key, our water. We had 33% increase in our changes, and the power of what we were doing just increased. Everybody was starting to get miracles, literally miracles. I mean, folks, have you ever heard of this kind of thing before in a program? We're just this little piece of diamond there, and we're just waiting to be able to give it to the world when we are given what we need to do that. But we have found the pathways, and one of the most important keys is to have the water, because 80% of that brain is water. And we know that our staff is so